The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
The original concept was on the technology side. This was not, we had no real intent to service the public. This was really that the Institute was created as an educational vehicle for professional artists. So basically the idea was that we created that, and artists would come in and they would learn new techniques, new tools, that side of things. So the idea was, train them in safety, because there's things like if you're going to weld, you don't want to weld galvanized because it throws up zinc, which is a heavy metal, and you breathe it in and you load your system with heavy metals. So these things like this that we wanted to teach them, as well as the machine tools. Having if you're going to work in metal, having a roll or a shear or something to drill it and tap it. And if you're going to work in stone, you can do it the Da Vinci way with a big hammer and a chisel, or you can do it with an air hammer and a chisel, or you can do it with a sandblaster, or you can do it with, he's developed some supersonic rocket engines, basically handheld, and you direct the output of the venturi at the stone, and it ablates the stone. It causes the intrinsic moisture in the stone to explode, and it flakes off the granite in these little chips. So we wanted to show these things to artists, and that was the reason to create the studio, was to have a place where we could put all this equipment, all this machinery. And part of it was great. Well, if we do this, we're going a lot of people are throwing away big pieces of machinery because nobody can run them anymore. Yeah. You don't have the machinists available that understand these things.
True.
Well, an artist, there's one thing about running it for production. We are trying to make parts. In that case, you buy a computer numerical control machine, program it once, push the button, and it kicks it out. An artist is doing one-off, so they're more than willing to sit there and play with an older piece of machinery. So that was part of our thing, was, get some of this older machinery that John and I love. I'm an engineer, but I've worked my way through college as a machinist and a welder and a pipe fitter and all that. So that was kind of the idea. Increase the state of technology in the arts by teaching artists, professional artists, to utilize the technology. And as part of that, we started the Symposium as a learning and a teaching tool. And suddenly we had works of art that spun off the Symposium. So then it was, well, let's put them around and give the public access to them. So the sculpture park was kind of the tail that's now wagging the dog. So now everything gets revolved around creating the symposiums and where the pieces go. But really, our purpose was out there where the artists are working, and the artists working on something different than they've done before. Carol's not worked in metal before.
No.
So she's learning to weld, and she's learning to cut. She's got the plasma cutter, and she's cutting out, thick plates of Core 10 steel. The gentleman, Eric, from Sweden, he's worked mostly in wood. Now he's implementing his wood carvings in granite. A little different.
Oh.
And then Dominika, she has worked in stone, but not so much in granite. So she's getting a chance to implement things in a different media too. And that was the whole, that's why it's called an institute. The Andres Institute of Art, because it was meant to be a teaching. That's why we're a 501c3. We're an educational institution.
Oh, indeed.
So, and the sculpture park just happened. So.
Well, giving this to the community, you know, it's truly a gift. And we were talking to the artists earlier, and really, they're leaving treasures or little messages behind, you know, and being their international experience, you know, spreading their word or their vision around the planet.
Yeah.
And this is one stop on that journey around the planet that people don't really appreciate that's out here. And we hope to talk more about Andres Institute, not only the Sculpture Symposium, but you also, speaking about being a teaching facility. I know you had the poured iron molding, the iron melting, and do some other teaching opportunities here.
Well, that's more and the public. They have you have the institute space, which is more of a private, you know, art for artists, and then you have the public space. And of course, the symposium, we let the public come in to see what's happening, so they can get a feel for, you know, how the art's created. But this year I donated the Big Bear Lodge at the bottom, which is a 12,000 square foot building.
A beautiful facility.
And they're, you know, basically they want to run classes there, and those will be classes for the public. And what we're working with is different artists that want to be instructors, or in some cases are instructors, and letting them utilize the space to run classes for what they do. Whether it's painting or pottery or you know, there's a fairy house thing where they create these cute little things, and that's more of a family thing. You know, you bring the kids out and you get art. I would like to see them kind of implement that, and my suggestion was set it up as an ongoing art for kids program. So it's an after-school program, it's a weekend program, but there's some consistency here. So the parents can count on when this class in, you know, figure painting is done, there'll be another class starting in pottery. So there's no missing things, and parents can plan on having a place they can park their kids after school. You know, it seems to be needed in a community like this, because we're really a bedroom community of people that are working in towards Boston. So you have two parents working and commuting. You know, it's good to have a place to park the kids after school.
No, you park the children, but give them an opportunity to be creative, use their imagination, get them learning a different technology, and not just some computer.
Well, a different
get them
means
away
of communication.
From that. Yes,
it's art is more than a technology. Art was our most basic means of communication. If you take a look at, you know, my theory is that what we ran out of the ability to evolve internally. In other words, we utilize 100% of our brain capacity. There's no stuff, you only use 90% or 10% is crazy. You use 100% of your brain capacity or it wouldn't be there. And in fact, as we evolved, we gave up part of our brains to utilize for other things. We gave up our olfactory sense. We cannot smell as accurately as a dog, but we can see a lot better. And then we developed a frontal cortex. At some point, we couldn't do that anymore. We had to go outside. I call it extra genome evolution. At that point, we utilized a new technology, which was communications. I could strap your brain and my brain together by initially art. And I'd say, well, I can't catch that gazelle. It's faster than I am, but if you'll stand right here with this rock, I'm going to chase it around. When it runs past you, hit it in the head, and we're both eating tonight. So, and that's your cave paintings, you know, are the hunt. To me, those were basically communicating between you and I what we were going to do to get dinner tonight, right? And the people that could do that communications were, you know, stronger evolutionary because they got fed. Right? So if we take a look, art is our most basic form of communication, and it still is, because right now we use it to communicate more ideals and emotions, and you try to elicit a response, and that response can be, you know, wow, I like it, or that's crap. You know, either way, and you know, that's what we're trying to do here. The artists all come with their concept. John doesn't lay a lot of requirements on them as to what they're doing, other than it has to be innovative. It has to be something that they're learning something, and it's got to be done in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Start to finish.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
And start being, pick what you're going to do and what materials you want. There's a pile of rocks, pick one. To finish, it's installed, it's connected to other pieces by trails.
What a challenge.
Yeah.
What a
Especially
challenge.
with these monumental pieces. I mean, that one there, Tears for Wells Fargo, that was a 2-week project. That was done with the circles and the pieces laying down. That was completed and placed in 2 weeks. That's what the symposium used to only be 2 weeks long.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah.
Wow. Well, it's wonderful to have patrons for the arts that feel as passionately as you do about presenting it and communicating to the community the message of creativity.
Yeah.
Stepping out, the history of talking and communicating, and it's here for generations.
Yeah, and
it's
we
meant
try
to
to get
last.
the community involved. That's one of our big focuses, and where we differ from a lot of, shall we say, the more classic sculpture parks, is, for instance, our artists stay with members of the community. We have a host family that takes care of the artist for 3 weeks. Now, that artist is living with an American family. They're eating our food, they're seeing what goes on, they're probably getting exposed to our television and all the rest of the crap that goes along with it. But effectively, they go back home with an understanding a little bit of what an American is, does, lives by. And likewise, the family, their kids, get exposed to what a European or an Asian it gets. And it's this mutual connection that we need more of in the world. Because if you don't know somebody, if you don't know their culture, you have a propensity to be afraid of them.
True.
And let's face it, as Americans, we got a pretty bad reputation in the world. Back in the 50s, the ugly American,
Yeah.
That was simply because we got the money to travel and we didn't know what we were doing,
Yeah.
So we stepped all over their cultures.
Right.
We did things and they're going, and it happens to this day. If you go to Japan, it's just not acceptable to be walking down the street eating something. They don't walk and eat. If you go to Thailand, you can't cross your legs and put your foot up to where the sole of your foot faces anybody.
No kidding.
Wow. You never touch a child on the head in most of the Asian cultures. And as Americans, just
We're unaware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully this integration of different cultures is going to go a long way in a small area, starting small.
Well. Every one of the artists that we talked to today, that we interviewed, spoke to, they all mentioned the community and the American people and how they were welcomed, and they all came away with a new view of, so the integration that you're trying to accomplish, I think, is definitely one thing that each artist is going home with.
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, it's working. Your master plan is working.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.